Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat sejahtera. Today we will continue our lecture. This is our final LU for this course, LU8 Marine Pollution. One of the most popular phrases used in the landfill and industrial waste disposal industries is the solution to pollution is dilution. Officially, this does not reflect any legal nor formal identification of how to deal with pollution. However, in the practical world, the phrase has merit. It basically means if you can dilute a pollutant enough, the resultant intensity of the pollution is reduced. Therefore, adding clean material to a contaminated product will reduce the toxicity of the resultant mix. In many instances, the mixing of non-contaminated soils with contaminated soil, for example, on a landfill results in a test result that is within the tolerance of the specification. The dilution of a potential hazardous material in the water supply by diluting the intensity of the mix with clean water will reduce the parts per million of the resultant hazardous product. This term, slang expression, is in many cases incorrectly used and abused by individuals that are not acquainted with all the specifics of the pollutant. Therefore, the phrase is not popular analysis by the professional. Even the professional will agree, however, that a reduction of the potency of a problematic pollution is with dilution. The majority of tests performed on pollution and contaminants refer the parts per million of the tested material against the remaining particles in the testing sample. To add clean material to a static contaminant will produce a test that will identify less product of contaminant per total sample. So the solution to pollution is dilution. This article is from www.panda.org. So it stated that a staggering amount of waste, much of which has only existed for the past 60 years or so, enters the ocean each year. What is highlighted in this article is the amount of pollution that enters ocean is still occur continuously. Okay, even though the regulation is there, but the numbers of waste that enters the ocean each year is still happening. These are the pollution in human history, especially for the first one is poison arrows. Humans have used toxic compound for centuries as a weapon, medicine, poison, and as antidote for poisoning. The first poison used by Kungsan tribe from the Kalahari Desert, they use extract from beetle on poison arrows since Neolithic. Okay, and the other one is water pipes, which contaminated ancient Rome, and of course, I think if you read the history in Ukraine, it's a radioactive at the Chernobyl, and of course, the famous one is Minamata disease in Japan, and the oil pollution during war. These are the worst oil spills in history. The total amount of oil spills is about 4,500,000 tons since 1967. And the total number of tanker spills is 9,522, and it will take about 50 years, okay, for a spill to clear up. The latest one, okay, which is you can see in this figure, is from Deepwater Horizon. Okay, is happened in 2010, about 165,000 tons. Coastal waters are highly affected by pollution because there are four reasons why coastal water are highly affected by pollution. Okay, one of it is heavily used. It's usually heavily used by the urbanization, by the human activities. Some of these places have residential area, so the amount of pollution discharge or the pollution production is very high. And of course, it's close to sources of pollution, because it's related to the first point. And then number 3 is the water bodies in coastal waters are shallow, and then it is not well circulated as the open ocean. These are the 4 factors why the coastal waters are highly affected by pollution. What is the meaning of pollution? Okay, this is a definition by the WHO. Marine pollution is the introduction by man, directly or indirectly, of substance or energy into a marine environment, including estuaries, which results or is likely to result in such deleterious effect as harm to living resources and marine life, hazards to human health, hindrance to marine activities, including fishing and other legitimate uses of the sea, impairment of quality for use of seawater, and reduction of amenities. Okay, it's a quite long definition, but you don't have to memorize it. You just only try to understand the points that are highlighted in the definition by the WHO. Okay, which is a substance. Okay, substance, and then deleterious effects. Okay, deleterious effects, hazards. Okay, that's the points that leads you to the definition. Okay, this is the Malaysian issues on the pollutions. Okay, which is you can read it on your own. This is an extra reading. You can read it later. There are 5 types of marine pollution. Okay, namely is a petroleum, sewage sludge, DDT and PCBs, mercury, and non-point source pollutions. I will explain what is the meaning of non-point source pollution later on. Okay, number 1, okay, the first pollutions that are quite popular, that are usually highlighted in the media, is a marine, is a petroleum. Okay, it's oil spills that can cause by a tanker accidents, intentional dumping, drilling or pumping operation. But the petroleum is biodegradable. Okay, it can be degraded naturally. It will cause effects to the other life, other marine life. It's not only other marine ecosystem, but it's also affected the organisms that are relying on the marine organisms as a food source. Okay, that will also disturb the trophic level of a food chain. Okay, marine pollution experts consider oil to be among the least damaging ocean pollutant. Okay, and the data from the 1989 Exxon Valdez oil spill shows the recovery of the key organism. Okay, even though it's quite alarming. Okay, so you can see in this figure here, you can see this eagle, and this is the timeline. Okay, this is the time where the Exxon Valdez oil spill happened. Okay, it caused some, it's a degradation. The population size is decreasing at the moment. Okay, but after that it shows some recovery. Okay, you can see the Pacific herring. Okay, it shows a decreasing trend, collapse. Okay, but you can see a recovery. What you can see, the petroleum, okay, can break up. Okay, can break up and degrade naturally. Okay, there are several processes, okay, that act to break up and degrade the oil spill and the petroleum in the marine environment. Okay, this figure shows the various processes. That's why the scientists, they can suggest that petroleum is a least damaging pollutant. Okay, this is the heavy fuel oil spill that happened in Port Klang in 1997. It discharged about 227 tons of fuel oil. The second pollution is sewage sludge. Sewage sludge is the semi-solid material that remains after sewage treatment. Much sewage sludge was dumped offshore until laws restricted to do so. The sewage sludge can pollute beach and kill marine life. Why? Because this sewage sludge contains a lot of nutrients. When the concentration of nutrients are high in a certain or a particular area, it will cause eutrophication. When the eutrophication happens, it will affect the marine life, the marine organism that lives in that area. The third one is DDT. DDT stands for dichlorodyphenyl trichloroethane. Okay, it's a widely used pesticide that became concentrated in marine fish. DDT can cause brown pelicans and osprey to produce thin egg shells. In worldwide, DDT has been banned from agricultural use, but still used in limited quantities for public health purposes. Even though you can see here, the DDT has been banned from agricultural use, but there are still reported cases of illegal pesticide use. Okay, it's happened in Cameron Highlands. In Cameron Highlands, where UKM, University Kebangsaan Malaysia researchers who conducted numerous tests found that concentration of banned pesticide DDT and lindane in Sungai Bertam and Sungai Telom, okay, they found this kind of pesticide. Okay, it is banned, it's completely banned in Malaysia, but there are still people illegally use this kind of pesticide. This is also the same issue. Okay, this is also the same issue, the use of the DDT. Yeah, the same issue is, okay, you can see this happened in 2013. Okay, 2013, and this articles is written on the 2012, so it's still happening. Okay, it's still happening, and it's still happening until 2015. They still reported an illegal use of this kind of pesticides. What happened? The next marine pollution is PCB. It's a group of toxic chemicals. It's a polychlorinated biphenyls. Once time, they are widely used as a coolants and lubricants in transformers, capacitors, and other electrical equipments. And PCB are insolubles, are extremely resistant to natural decay. PCB enters the marine environment through leaks and from discarded equipment. And PCB can accumulate in animal fatty tissues and affect reproduction. Okay, this is the case happened in the Hudson River, where there is a contamination, the PCB contamination in the Hudson River, and then the fish in that area cannot be consumed because of this kind of contamination. This figure shows the flows, okay, on the concept of biomagnification. Okay, you need to know what is the meaning of biomagnification. Biomagnification is the accumulation of a chemical by an organism from water and food exposure that results in a concentration that is greater than would have resulted from water exposure only, and thus greater than expected from equilibrium. But it's quite complicated definition. Let me simplify it for you. Okay, the term biomagnification refers to the progressive buildup of persistent substances by successive trophic levels, meaning that it relates to the concentration ratio in a tissue of a predator organism as compared to that in its prey. As you can see here, okay, this is the trophic level. This is a food change. It's a trophic level. Okay, this is the situation how the PCBs are transferred, okay, from the water through the higher trophic level in the Puget Sound. The PCB are released from the sources into the Puget Sound, and then this PCB will be absorbed by the phytoplankton. Okay, after that, the phytoplankton will be eaten by the zooplankton. The zooplankton will be eaten by the herring, and the herring will be eaten by the salmon. As this process occurs, okay, the PCB will be transferred as well, and then after that, okay, the salmon will be consumed by the large mammals. Okay, as you can see here, the concentration of the PCBs are also increased as long as it moves to the higher trophic level. Okay, of course, it is because of the size. Okay, so you can see the phytoplanktons are basically relatively smaller than the zooplankton. Okay, of course, the zooplankton will eat more phytoplankton. And of course, the herring will eat more zooplankton. It will not only eat one individual, it will eat more. And then in this situation, the numbers of PCB transferred in the organism will be increased as well. Okay, and this will happen throughout, okay, throughout and upper, and will move to the higher trophic level. And when this situation happen, the concentration of the PCBs will increase as well. So you need to understand the concept of the biomagnification. Minamata disease is a neurological disease caused by severe mercury poisoning. Signs and symptoms include ataxia, numbness in the hands and feet, general muscle weakness, loss of peripheral vision, and damage to hearing and speech. Okay, Minamata disease is a methylmercury poisoning, okay, with neurological symptoms and caused by the daily consumption of large quantity of fish and shellfish that were heavily contaminated with a toxic chemical generated in chemical factories, then discharged into the sea. The concept of Minamata disease is the same as the concept of biomagnification that happened in Puget Sound before. Okay, as the concentration of the mercury are increasing, okay, when it moves to the higher trophic level, and the fish were consumed by the residential people, it will cause a severe effect. Okay. All right, this is the children with the Minamata disease, okay, because due to the intrauterine methylmercury poisoning, is a very tragic cases. Non-point source pollution is pollution resulting from many diffuse sources, in direct contrast to point source pollution which result from a single source. So the non-point source solution is we cannot see the pollution point. The non-point source pollution can include excess fertilizers, herbicide and insecticides from agricultural lands and residential area, oil, grease and toxic chemical from urban runoff and energy production, sediment from improperly managed construction site, crop and forest land, and eroding stream banks. So we cannot see the sources. Okay, it is different than the point solution where we can see the point of pollution. The main difference between point source and non-point source pollution is that the point source pollution occurs through a specific identifiable sources, okay, where the non-point source pollution occurs through a combination of pollutant from a large area. The point source are easy to recognize. Okay, we can see, okay, for example, if we see an outlet from a factory, that is a point source of solution. But the non-point source of solutions, they are not easily defined and they are not easily found. There are various waste disposal problem. Okay, one of the major waste disposal problem is attributed to a generation of too much waste. America alone is responsible for the producing of about 220 million tons of waste annually. In 2007, for instance, it's recorded that Americans generated nearly 260 million tons of municipal solid waste. According to the World Bank report, the average global municipal solid waste generation per person on daily basis is about 1.2 kilograms. Most landfills lack on proper on-site waste management, thereby contributing to additional threat to the environment. In the long term, landfill leak and pollute groundwater and other neighboring environmental habitats, making waste management very difficult. They also give off potentially unsafe gases. Waste disposal and management facilities as well as state resources have continued to rely on myopic and quickie solutions instead of developing effective recycling and waste reduction programs. Consequently, it has created continued reliance on the use of outdated technology to deal with the. This is the loss in 1972. Okay, Congress passed the Clean Water Act. It is now required a permit to dump trash in any ocean within the 3 nautical miles of a shore and anywhere in lakes, rivers, bay and sounds. It is illegal to dump plastic. It is the same from 3 to 12 nautical miles offshore. Okay, it's illegal to dump plastic, and most of the area is an illegal area to dump plastic. So each of knowing violation of this requirement may result in a fine of up to $500,000 and 6 years imprisonment. This is the law that are one of the effort that can be used to minimize the discharge, to minimize the plastic discharge in the sea. About 8 million tons of plastic is estimated to enter the ocean each year. And if business continues as usual, we will face a future with more plastic in the ocean than fish by 2050. Our plastic addiction and waste mismanagement is condemning countless marine birds and animals to death by entanglement or poisoning, and even leading to chemical contamination of the fish we eat. From the Arctic to the Antarctic, no corner of the ocean is untouched by this global issue. The vast world of plastic rubbish visible on the sea surface, horrifying as they are, represent just the tip of an iceberg. What lies there are the masses of microbits and broken down particles of plastic that are easily ingested by sea creatures and impossible to remove. The urgently needed solution calls for a combination of enhanced awareness, reduced plastic use, and massively improved waste management. You can see here in the figure here, okay, they found a plastic fragment in a 5-week-old rainbow runner caught in August 2008. (70% to 100% of North Pacific seabirds are affected by eating plastic. This bird starved to death because it ate too much plastic trash. Because this bird, okay, they confuse the real food with the plastic, and then they starve to death. The Pacific Garbage Patch, also known as Pacific Trash Vortex, is a garbage patch, a gyre of marine debris particles in the central North Pacific Ocean. The collection of plastic and floating trash originated from the Pacific Rim, including countries in Asia, North America, and South America. The gyre is divided into 2 areas: the Eastern Garbage Patch between Hawaii and California, and the Western Garbage Patch extending eastward from Japan to the Hawaiian Islands. Despite the common public perception of the patch existing as giant island of floating garbage, its low density prevents detection by satellite, or even by casual boaters or divers in the area. This is because the patch is widely dispersed area consisting primarily of suspended fingernail size or smaller bits of plastic over microscopic particles in the upper water column known as microplastic. Researchers from the Ocean Cleanup Project claim that the patch covers about 1.6 million square kilometers. Some of the plastic in the patch is over 50 years old and includes items such as plastic lighters, toothbrushes, water bottles, pens, baby bottles, cell phones, plastic bags, and so on. The small fibers of wood pulp found throughout the patch are believed to originate from the thousands of tons of toilet paper flushed into the ocean daily, and this patch is surprisingly rapidly accumulating. The patch is believed to have increased tenfold each decade since 1945. A similar patch of floating plastic debris is found in the Atlantic Ocean called the North Atlantic Garbage Patch. This growing patch contributes to other environment damage to marine ecosystem and species. This is the estimated decomposition rates of common marine debris item. Okay, the larger the circles, the longer it takes. Okay, you can see here, you can see the disposable diapers, the pampers, pampers yang kamu pakai, yang adik-adik kamu pakai, your siblings, your baby, adik-adik kamu pakai. It will take about 450 years to decompose. Okay, and you can see here the fishing line, 600 years. Okay, and plastic beverage holder is about 400 years. Newspapers only take 6 weeks. Okay, the Apple core only 2 months. Okay, so you need to be aware that, okay, the plastic is very difficult to decompose. All right, you can reach this infographic later. Okay, this is an additional information that you can read. Okay, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Okay, you can read here. It's a campaign, okay, to reduce, to reuse, to recycle, to minimize the production of garbage patch. Okay, you can read it later. Okay, and you can read this the additional information as well. Thank you very much for your attention.